Hello, this is Fear Dragon coming at you with another StarCraft 2 netcast. Today we have game number 3 in this best of 5 series between TSLHyun and MilleniumAdelscott from the GO4SC2 Cup, number 222. If you have not seen game number 1 or game number 2, go ahead and check those out from the links below, the little annotations that will carry you over to your dreams and wonderful land of rainbows and happiness. But if you have seen game number 1 and game number 2, you've already visited the land of rainbows and happiness, we'll go ahead and introduce these players in game number 3. Spawning over here in the top right-hand corner of Antiga Shipyard, we have the French Protoss player as the orange Protoss player, MilleniumAdelscott. He is currently tied with his opponent 1-1. We're going to have to see what the Gateway Protoss can do to bring back this best of 5 series in his favor. And his opponent spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Antiga Shipyard in the cross spawn position, we have the red Zerg player representing Team TSL. His name is Hyun, and he is a Code A Korean Zerg. Also, of course, tied 1-1 with his opponent. And we're going to see how he is able to take the next 2 games, or if he's going to be brought to game number 5. Now, interesting note, just to say one more time, I promise you guys I will stop belaboring this point so much in just a second. But Adelscott, once again, not opting to go for that Forge Fast Expand, not opting to go for the Gateway Wall Off, not opting to do any of that, not actually even opting to go for the Pylon Extractor Gateway Wall Off alongside the Nexus in this game. Just throwing down the Gateway, just wherever the hell he wants it to be, I guess. You know, Adelscott realizes the value in positioning your buildings far out, as that will allow the Zerglings to get the full surround on your buildings. And really, you want to make sure that those Zerglings get the full surround, because if all the Zerglings are surrounding the buildings, that means less of the Zerglings can attack your probes, because they're all going to be occupied attack. Okay, please, if you're listening to this, I'm lying my ass off right now. Please don't do that. Unless you're Adelscott or Whitedraw. Whitedraw actually tends to go for those wall-offs, at least over by his Nexus, when he does decide to go for some kind of crazy no wall-off at the ramp or at wherever his Forge Fast Expand kind of play. But we do actually see Hyun opening up with that early pool is going to be going for that same kind of style he went for in game number 1. That does mean that Adelscott's going to be somewhat underprepared, as that Cybernex core is just now finishing up. We do see the Chrono Boost going down on that sentry. We're going to have to see whether or not it comes out in time, as the 2 first Zerglings are coming out across the map. And now we do see the Zealot being very, very angry that his master is not letting him sit over at the nice little choke point, being forced to defend this entire run by himself. Is going to take out his anger on that supply depot. Unfortunately, there are no Terrans there to defend that. But now we do see the sentry popping out. It is going to be eliminate none of those Zerglings, but that Zealot is going to go ahead and give chase to those 2 Zerglings. Meanwhile, the Force Field being forced to be thrown down. The second sentry is going to be coming out in just a little bit. Those Zerglings are going to be as annoying as possible, but with that second sentry coming out, oh man, it's not going to come out quite in time, as those 3 Zerglings are going to be able to pop up alongside those other 2 Zerglings, going to be forced out with that second Force Field. But we don't see any additional units coming out for Adelscott, and now there are a flock of Zerglings running around inside Adelscott's base, and they can be so annoying. We can see just that little kind of hit and run tactics is going to be the doom of Adelscott, unless he has some very, very perfect micro. Now we do see a nice little gateway wall off finally going down from Adelscott. Would have actually really liked if he had thrown that down a little bit earlier. And also behind all this, you have to realize that Hyun is taking that natural expansion. Oh my god, that's a lot of Zerglings coming out in just a couple of seconds from Hyun. I'm really curious to see if he's going to go for some kind of Baneling Buster or what, as I guess this Pylon will be very vulnerable, and actually with that Gateway cancel, it's also going to be very vulnerable. But now he does have 3 sentries. It's going to mean 3 Force Fields in just a couple of seconds to prepare for this giant Zergling aggression. Now, one thing you also have to note is just look at the worker counts. We can see TSLHyun actually behind in that worker count, because he's been spending all of that. Oh my god, hold that thought. MilleniumAdelscott, what are you doing, sir? There is a huge number of Zerglings. You cannot take your expansion right now, sir. Back off. Sit on your ramp and build up a higher army to deal with the Zergling force before you try and throw down your Nexus, sir. You know, oftentimes the one thing I really hate is when casters are presumptuous about what a player is doing, but in this situation, oh man, I just don't know what Adelscott is doing. I mean, maybe he is just trying to poke out and see what he can get away with, but still losing that money, those 100 minerals that he doesn't want to lose when he's sitting on one base and canceling that expansion. Oh, I just don't agree with that decision making at all. But as I was saying before, Hyun did invest a large amount of larva very early on in these Zerglings that did delay his ability to drone up for quite a while, but now he is able to start and delay MilleniumAdelscott's own expansion for quite a bit with those Zerglings, and now finally with this very large sentry count, he's going to be able to finally secure that natural expansion. So wow, it looks like this game is actually going to shape up to be kind of even-ish, as we can see Hyun just droning up like a madman, playing as greedy as he wants to, at least for the next minute or two. I think he's going to be able to play fairly greedy. He's going to have to get that Roach Horn and going to be starting those upgrades in the relatively near future. But for the most part, Hyun can kind of just play this as he kind of likes right now. Wouldn't actually recommend highly that he grabs that third quite yet, as he does know that Adelscott could just be pumping out a massive number of units, preparing for some kind of 10-minute push or something. I know there are a couple of pushes that you can do around 10 minutes, even despite how crazy and weird this game has been. But it looks like we actually see Adelscott moving out across the map around 9 minutes. So again, that 10-minute push, he will be able to set up that proxy pylon and be prepared to do some kind of push by around the 10-minute mark. But it looks like with this Stalker moving around there, I'm really curious if he's going to be going for that third expansion very soon. Man, Adelscott playing so passive, playing so greedy, but now we do see these units finally moving out across the map, trying to seize a little bit of map control against those Zerglings, but he has to be very, very careful about this Zergling counterattack potential, as we do see now with Adelscott moving out his entire army over to the center of the map. Now these Zerglings can swing into the natural expansion and potentially into the main, but there is a nice little wall off going down over here, so that mean he's going to be able to buy a little bit of time for his units to move back out over to his natural expansion as these Zerglings try and whittle away at that Stalker Zealot force. And now we do see one additional weapon of those Zealot is going to stop those Zerglings from being able to do anything. And now with those nice force fields, he is able to pick everything off. But of course, that did buy Hyun a lot of time. Now he was able to get up this huge roach count, and the longer he delays, the closer he is to finishing up that +1 missile attacks. And versus the 0-0 upgrades of Adelscott, Hyun's going to be sitting in a very nice position. Now he is taking that third, so that does mean he's going to have to try and defend until that finishes up. That is going to mean once it is finished up, though, he will have some additional larvae, but I don't think it's going to come into play until after this push is kind of done and decided. Now we do see a very large number of Stalkers already out for MilleniumAdelscott, but the proxy pylon is quite far away. We're going to have to see how well he can deal against his massively roach-based army. There is no Galileo reconstitution, though. These roaches are moving very slow, but it is very helpful to have that creep advantage. Now we're going to have to wait and see. There are quite a few force fields already thrown down, but those sentries have quite a bit of energy. Now the roach is trying to move in, trying to bait out those force fields from going down so that he will not have them for the big engagement. There, a lot of roaches actually getting trapped on the front lines, able to pick off quite a few of those Stalkers. Would like to see some focus firing going down on the sentries, but not going to really be seeing it. Doesn't look like it's going to matter, though, as the roach count is very, very large. And it looks like with some reinforcing roaches, he's going to be able to clean up a massive number of those things and safely be able to get up that third expansion. So Hyun looking to be in a very nice position. And go ahead and take a look at the worker count. We do see that Hyun is sitting on only 46 drones. Generally, you do see the worker count for a Zerg player a little bit higher by this point. But of course, then again, you generally see Protoss players go for a Forge Fast expansion, or even when they go for a Gateway expansion, you don't see some kind of early aggression like that. But we do see some nice little burrow play trying to save those roaches, and it's definitely going to work out for him, as there is no observer out on the map. So even though those force fields were thrown down, trying to trap those roaches, not going to work out too well for Adelscott. We do see the Stalker count getting built up so massively high. Still no upgrades coming out. We do see that Forge finishing up in just a second. No third going down for Adelscott, so he's kind of committed to doing a lot of damage with this giant Stalker army. And we do see a couple of more force fields going down, and I really would like to see Hyun retreat back with that. Oh man, it looks like the observer is actually out. I take it back. That burrow not going to be helpful for him at all, and now he needs to really go back and retreat. He'd still really need to be able to outrun this army and go back to that creep where he's going to be a little bit safer, be a little bit better off against those force fields. And once again, we do see that layer tech finished up, but really nothing being researched outside of that Galileo reconstitution, which he definitely needs, especially against that very stalker-based sentry army. And it looks like, once again, Adelscott looking to do a little bit of aggression, finally starting that +1 weapons upgrade. And how many gateways is he sitting on at this point? He does actually have that robotic facility out, but he's sitting on 7 gateways, so very much going to be kind of all in at this point, honestly. As we even see, he's not really producing any more workers. He's kind of just sitting on 48 workers, moving around with a stalker sentry army, not even really producing immortals at this point, just going to be trying to take out this third, take out his opponent, do enough damage that he can just safely be very far ahead of his opponent, honestly. And now we do see the Roach army is massive from Hyun, and he is going to be finishing off the +2 missile attacks, so definitely going to be working out if he can go ahead and get that out, as well as the tunneling claws. Even though there is that observer out, it's very useful, especially when your units are getting force fielded out. So having those tunneling claws allows those units in the back to get up to the front and help out those units that got force fielded out in the front. Now we do see a little bit of immortal production starting up, and I do like that decision by Adelscott, as those immortals are going to be very useful considering Hyun is not really teching up, and we do see this little dancing around, and it all has to do with the geography of this map, this little choke point over here, and Hyun is very, very wary about engaging at that choke point. As you can see, these force fields can basically just cut up your army in half if you try and go through along this choke point, but now we do see Hyun getting into a very nice position, but oh no, it might actually come out and back to bite him if he is not very careful. As we do see over here, there's still a nice little choke point created by this little gap over here and this assimilator. And where is Hyun going to try and engage? He is going to be able to pick off that proxy pylon. That's definitely going to be very, very helpful. But now we do see Hyun trying to go in for that big engagement. The concave is definitely favoring Hyun, but those force fields are acting very, very well in Adelscott's favor. But now we do see the roaches starting to get in, starting to do a big amount of damage, and actually a cancel on that proxy pylon warp in. And now we do see the roaches are putting the stalkers on the retreat, and the immortal trying to get a flanking position, but it's not really going to work out too well. A bit of miscontrol, not really getting that immortal involved in the battle, and now the roaches are being able to clean up a large number of these stalkers, and now the tunneling claws being very useful to get past those force fields, and now the sentries completely out of energy. I think that Hyun is going to be able to clean up this army without a hitch any longer. As we can see over here, is one immortal getting 6 kills, 8 kills. Wow, getting quite a few kills, but it's just not going to be enough. He's going to need to be a Tassadar, or just need a Tassadar-like unit to come back into this game, even though he does have a couple of sentries ready to force field, and he does have this hidden third going up. I'm not sure if it's going to be enough, as even with those tunneling claws, it's going to be very, very difficult for Adelscott to be able to fend off this roach cannon. And now we do see the roaches coming in. There's going to be the GG from Adelscott. So very well played by both of these players, but Hyun just showing, hey, roaches is all you need to break a Protoss opponent, especially once you get those tunneling claws, you get those +2 missile attack upgrades, and it doesn't matter how good your force fields are, no matter how many choke points you try and engage your opponent's army at, eventually just those overwhelming numbers and those 3 bases mining, which is going to be too much, and Hyun able to take that game. So it's going to be brought up to 2-1 in Hyun's favor. Let's go ahead and jump into game number 4 after you go ahead and like and subscribe my video, or my channel. But yeah, I don't want to really belabor this point too long. These games have been pretty long for the most part outside of game number 1. So let's just go ahead and jump into game number 4. I'll see you guys.